All right.
Okay. Really appreciate everyone's time this morning. Hope everyone's feeling sprightly after the night before. And welcome to the K2 session for Making Everyone an Innovator, How Business Apps Will Change Your Company Culture, the longest title you'll most probably hear this week. My name is Jonathan King. My colleague.
I'm Anthony Petro, and we're from K2. We're going to take you through the session this morning. Before we start, I want to do the requisite starting polls of who in the audience knows who K2 is and about our on-premises platform, K2 Black Pearl. Okay, we've got a few folks. How about those who know about our cloud platform, K2 Appit? All right, quite a few of those as well. And then how many people had too much fun last night and don't want to sit through more polls in PowerPoint? All right, let's get going. So in that, you can see we've got a pretty quick PowerPoint session here. I'm going to take you through some of the industry trends and challenges, and then very quickly get into how K2 can help address those through our business apps platform, Appit. And then we'll hand it over to Jono to take us through some demos. So it's very demo heavy, and we're going to try to show you what we do as opposed to talk about it. But I will start with some of the trends to set the context here. So we're seeing throughout organizations everywhere, right, with the freely available online applications that the democratization of IT is happening, right? IT is kind of losing control of what's going on in the organization. People continue to install their own tools, and that's really fueling this data explosion problem that we have, both structured and unstructured data, and especially when we look at things like cloud storage and the content fragmentation that's happening. This is even highlighted in the keynotes on Monday when Gurdeep spoke about how Microsoft's empowering the future of work and addressing the challenges in a world of apps, devices, and data, where we have infinite apps, devices, and data. And this is really what K2 is about, is really helping you to get control of that infinite data problem that we have and build business applications around these solutions very, very quickly. And as part of that, we want to make sure that you're not just kind of addressing challenges and trying to plug the holes that you have, but instead that you're accelerating your business. We want to make sure that you're able to achieve these top-line outcomes, like driving revenue or increasing productivity. And another mention in the keynote was about that this is a fundamental way to improve productivity, is to have these business process contexts in your tools that you use to build productivity applications and communication applications. And again, we'll see how K2 Appit lets you do that. This platform allows you to, through no code, drag and drop visual tools to build applications that contain reusable workflows, so workflows that you build once and can use many, many times, as well as forms that can bring that data right to your various devices. So we want to make sure that we do focus on that no-code side of things. So low-code is kind of this industry standard that's coming out, right? People are shying away from no-code and going back to low-code, so that you can kind of still have to have that developer focus and have that in your application building experience. But with Appit, we really are pushing for no-code. We want to make it so that you can very easily, through configuration, talk to your line of business systems, whether that's a REST endpoint that you need to pull data from a back-end system, or it's a well-defined system like something like Salesforce. But we really are trying to enable you to build these different styles of apps, document-centric, list-centric, data-centric, et cetera, bring those to the mobile devices, and do that with no code and very, very rapidly. And this slide is really to kind of set the landscape of what K2 provides and how we allow you to build these applications. So it doesn't matter if you're coming from an on-premises solution, so you've got SharePoint on-prem, maybe SQL Server on-prem and some web services, and you have K2 in the cloud, for example, with K2 Appit. You can build solutions that span that spectrum. Or maybe it's the other way around. You've got SharePoint online, I've got Salesforce, DocuSign, et cetera, sitting in the cloud, and I've got K2 on-premises. And you can do that with K2 Black Pearl. Or you can merge the two together and build these hybrid solutions that merge between both on-prem and cloud K2 solutions, as well as all of the various applications that you're trying to talk to. So what we're really trying to do is make it so that you're not worried about how do I connect to these things, what are the issues with connectivity, but that instead you're worried about how do I get content out of my cloud storage system, and then how do I make a post on the social media site. And that's what K2 app building is all about, is enabling those types of solutions and making it very, very easy to accomplish what you need to in this ever-changing landscape. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jono, who's going to take us through some demos.
Excellent. You know, one punch me on?
One?
Please. Excellent.
Right.
So we're going to go through a number of different demos today, and I just want to set some context as to what we're going to do, particularly for those of you who are perhaps brand new to what K2 and the Appit for SharePoint platform can offer. So we're going to go through a number of different scenarios addressing basically different business applications you can build. We're going to start in the world of SharePoint. We're going to work about how can we turn SharePoint into a platform for business applications. How can we do that easily? How can we do that quickly? And then really how can we evolve that and get some value out of that across the business? Then we're going to have a look at how we can build business applications that go beyond that SharePoint context. Because it's important that we have a tool set that we build applications, not just in SharePoint and even not just in the Microsoft realm, but we can build business applications that really draws together all of our investments that we've made across our IT landscape and that we're planning to make in the coming years as well. And then we'll look about how we can draw all of that together. A couple of things. As I go through, I'm going to work through some fundamentals. So if you're brand new, I'll introduce you to the tooling. If you're an old hand, we'll show you some fancy new stuff that's coming as well. A few points to highlight. We're talking about low-code and no-code application and business application development here. So a couple of contexts. Everything I show you today, I've built using just browser-based tooling. I haven't written any code, so no code was harmed in the creation of all these demos today. And it's given me the ability to create really compelling applications. Equally, this is just a taste of what's possible, just to set some context, and we'll go through a little bit about that as to how you can go beyond that as well. And finally, to call upon that app, that quote that Anthony mentioned a second ago, that was mentioned in the keynote. It was about the fundamental way to improve business efficiency is to contextualize your business process management scenarios with your collaboration and your communication platforms. I'm pretty sure that was stolen from me, but I'll give the first one for free. The next one is going to cost the Microsoft CEO. So let's jump into a little bit of what's possible. And let's start with the first scenario. And it's really about saying, hey, I have SharePoint. Little point of note here as well. When I say SharePoint, I'm talking collectively about either SharePoint on premises or Office 365 SharePoint Online. At K2 and for our Appit platform as well, we don't differentiate between the two. If you've got SharePoint on premises, fantastic, we can help you out. If you've got SharePoint Online or Office 365, fantastic, exact same platform, exact same technology, we can help you out. If you've got both, perfect, we can do that too. Same technology, same product, everything you see here, we don't differentiate. And that's a critical element as you move forward over the next months and years. If you're on-premise today and you're looking to move into the cloud, or you're in the cloud already, you want to make one investment, and you can tackle that with one set of tools. So let's jump into our SharePoint scenario. And this is really about saying, hey, I have SharePoint Online. How do I turn this into an apps platform? How do I do it quickly? And we talk about this concept of appifying a SharePoint list or a document library. These are the fundamental building blocks of SharePoint. So a lot of the times when you sit down, even with no-code platforms, I find it myself, I get this concept of almost writer's block. I can build so much, but if you give me a blank canvas, I don't know where to start. So even though we have fantastic tools, and I'm going to jump in and show you how we build these really simply, the concept here is that I don't want to have to start from scratch. Don't give me a blank canvas. And so one of the things we've worked hard on is providing a set of templates that when you come into SharePoint and you've got Appit for SharePoint from us, that you can come in and you can select from a preset set of templates. So I've jumped into a calendar here, just an out-of-the-box calendar. I happen to call it room booking. I'm going to come into my ribbon, and you'll see the Appit for SharePoint app at the top. And I'm going to come into my application here. And this is where I'm going to start. Anytime I'm going to start using the tooling to build applications. And so it's going to ask you a couple of things when you start building these apps. It's going to say, hey, do you want to create a brand new one? And that's sort of that blank canvas concept I spoke of before, and we'll have a look at that a little bit later. Then we'll also get this concept of, hey, have you been emailed a solution? Say you've got a colleague in a different department, and they're appifying their SharePoint list. They're building apps with Appit for SharePoint, and they've created this cool little form. They've created a workflow, and it's really helping them do perhaps project management scenarios or document approvals or room bookings, employee onboarding scenarios. That's fine. They can package that up. They can email it to you. You can deploy it, and away you go. You've got a brand new app for you as well. The other thing you have available to you is a whole bunch of templates that are contextual for this particular asset in SharePoint. So because I'm in a calendar in SharePoint, Appit for SharePoint gives you a whole range of templates that I can go and deploy straight away. I don't have to start with that blank canvas and build all this from scratch. Makes no sense. We've done all this before. We give you these templates. Same thing again if I move from here and go back to my sales portal and jump into something like the issue tracking list or even a document library like my sales quotes here, I'm going to get a different set of templates because obviously the templates we use are going to be different based upon the asset we're converting. All of these templates we have stored in the cloud, so that means we're just going to be adding new templates as we produce them. As you're using K2 for Appit, you get these templates for free and they'll start appearing here and I can start deploying these straight away. Some of the nice ones that we'll have available are things like, hey, I just want to send this document through a workflow and send it to DocuSign for approval. I don't want to have to build that workflow every time. Why not just have it as a template, deploy, and away you go. And now you've got a whole process to send documents straight to DocuSign as well. So little things like that are great productivity gains. But that's okay. So what do you get when you deploy one of these templates? And let's have a look at some of the tooling about how easy it is to start using these. So let's come back here, and I deployed one of these templates last night, and just to save some time, I'm going to jump into my scenario. So now what you're going to see when I go into the Appit app is that it's going to look a little bit different here. So rather than templates, I've already converted, I've appified my list and library here, my library in this case, and it's given me a bunch of assets. K2's going to create all of these cool things for me, and it's actually a running app. So when I talk about templates, I was actually lying. These are running apps that you can use straight away. It's not just a starter that I can have to then finish off the rest of it. They're fully blown running apps that you can start running. So let's have a look at some of these assets. And if you're new to K2, this is where we're going to start diving into some of the tooling as to how easy it is to build these applications. And the reason we focus on ease and speed of building these applications, because we want everyone in the business to be able to take some ownership of creating apps. Just a quick show of hands, who would say they're sort of a business analyst in the organization, sort of form that role? Excellent. More IT pro, sysadmin type of person, show of hands. Cool. Let's call it a visual developer. You can customize, you can build apps, drag and drop with the best of them. Quick show of hands. Nice. And those of you who write code for a living, whether it's JavaScript, C#, Swift, quick show of hands. Okay, cool. So we're talking about building applications, and a lot of this is about enabling different people in the business to take ownership of creating these apps themselves, taking some of that reliance away from IT, but equally empowering IT with really cool tools, fast tools as well. So what I get is I get a bunch of forms. So K2 is part of our Appit for SharePoint platform, has a fantastic forms platform called Smart Forms. I'll talk a little bit about that as we go today. So I've got a bunch of forms that we've auto-created on this asset. I've also got a workflow that's going to drive the approval cycle because this is a document approval process, and we'll have a look at that as well. So this I get completely out of the box. So before I jump into the actual customization of this app, let's just experience what this app would look like. As I said, this template's a running app, and this is going to look very SharePoint-y. So if you say, well, where does K2 sit behind this? That's kind of a good thing, because when you deliver these apps, you want to make sure it's a seamless experience. You don't want to have your end users have to relearn these platforms. That doesn't help, and that doesn't drive business adoption. You want it to be seamless. You want it to really work with that. You want all the power of what Appit for SharePoint offers. So let's come in here. I'm going to create a really simple scenario. I'm going to drag in a contract from my samples. And as part of this particular template, I made it intentional that I'm going to have to start this workflow manually, because we're going to go through the approval cycle here. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to start this manually. But if you're familiar with building apps in SharePoint, obviously you can do other things like, hey, as soon as a document arrives, go and start this automatically. When different events fire on that document library, go and start that workflow straight away as well. So you don't have to do it manually, just for the purposes of this example. The nice thing you get here is you get this nice overview of all the workflows that have run against this particular library. So you get all of this for free when you deploy these apps. You get this nice insight into what's going on. Obviously, I haven't run anything yet, but I have my contract and quote review workflow there. Let's go and start that. And it's going to start that workflow. And I'm going to work through some of the fundamentals here as well. Because I spoke about this is just a running application that we've deployed from our template. So we've got our workflow. When we talk about workflow in the K2 world, whether it's Appit or whether it's K2 Black Pearl, our on-premises product, it's very much about human-centric workflow. It's about people being assigned tasks, making decisions. Now, depending upon your app, that's going to mean different things. Sometimes it's just approvals, really simple scenarios. Sometimes it's about data enrichment. Hey, here's a really rich form. I need you to add some information. I need you to make a decision, and that decision is going to impact the flow of that workflow as well. So those are the types of workflows we're dealing with. Equally, as part of those workflows, we're going to automate different interactions with systems. We want to make it easy for people to get, I like to talk about K2. You do a little bit, but you get a lot out of that. As an individual, I do a little bit, the workflow automatically assigns metadata. It puts the document in the right place. The business gets insight into how we're functioning. So it's that do a little, get a lot. So as part of that exercise, remember we're going through a workflow here that is about document review. I've been assigned a worklist task. So the tasking as part of human-centric workflow is a big deal because, as I said, we're assigning tasks to different people, different groups. They need to make decisions, be notified. So in the SharePoint world, we provide this fantastic work list. Basically, this is your universal task list. It shows you all of the tasks that you've been assigned across all of your K2 and Appit workflows. And so you have a single place to see all of your work. A little bit later on, I'll show you the exact same work list on a mobile device as well. I can access this anywhere. One of the other nice features we have that some of you who are new to K2 haven't seen before is what we call the view flow. And it's just a graphical representation of the workflow that I'm currently running through. And so this is the first time I've actually shown you the workflow that we're actually executing. So when I went and manually started this process, this is what actually initiated. We're going to track this particular workflow live during the course of how we interact with it. And so we have this nice insight into what's actually occurring. We can see what's finished. We can drill into this and we can have a real-time understanding of how my workflow is performing. So this is just all end user. I'm going to start customizing this in just a second. So that's great. And we can also see various things here, like, well, if this task is assigned to a group of people or an individual even, if they make a decision, what's going to happen? How is the workflow going to respond and what's going to occur after that? So it's very easy to visualize, hey, this is what's going to happen, and we'll see this evolve. And so you can see this person has a couple of decisions around document approval. They can decline it. They can request more information. This is a really, really simple workflow. Just using it for today's example, you can build them far bigger, better, more badder than this if you so choose. So let's have a look at this. So let's come back and say, well, actually, now I need to make that decision as the user. So what I want to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to open this form. And so you'll see this is a little sort of simplified form of what you'd get in SharePoint, but it's got the context of the workflow I'm actually participating in. As the individual who's got this task, I can open it up. I can see the various elements of the SharePoint library. Now, my SharePoint library was just using the standard out-of-the-box features. So in fairness, a document library in SharePoint out of the box is quite boring. It's just 2 fields. There's some context behind that. But that's what we have so far. And as part of that, we've got our workflow context. And it gives us those decisions to say, hey, you've been assigned this task. You need to make a decision around this. The decision you make is going to impact about what happens next. Fairly simple, standard stuff as part of that, which is cool. So rather than action this task, I'm going to look at this and go, well, really, I've deployed my template. I've got this running app. But in fairness, I need to change it. It's not quite what I want. I need to extend it and build some more stuff around that. So let's go and do that now. And we can jump into some of the tooling and see how we built all of these applications today. So I'm going to leave that form open because we're going to come back to it in just a second. So let's drill back into our contract and quote review. I'm going to come into my K2 app and I'm going to start. Actually, I've gone one too far. Let's cruise back again because actually I need to customize my library. So let's come back and let's actually just go to the classic library settings, and I'm going to add a couple of columns because I want some more context. If I'm going to go through doing a quote review, I need some context around simple things. So let's add some couple of columns. This is most probably the most, so let's say something like contract amounts. We'll make that a currency field, which is excellent. Let's add something like products, and then we'll add something like a region we're in as well. Bless you. And the last one is region. Perfect. Pretty simple, nothing earth-shattering. Trust me, we'll build some cooler stuff a little bit later we're starting on a slow burn here as well. So I've customized my list. Now I want to go and extend that form. I want to make it a really rich and powerful form as part of that. So that's okay. I'm going to go back to my app here. Fantastic. And away we go. So what's going to happen here is that the app is going to be smart enough to say, hey, you've changed something as part of your library. And as part of that, do you want me to do a couple of things? It'll go and regenerate all those forms. It'll give me that new experience if I wanted to. But sometimes I don't want to do that because I may have already made some customizations. So I'm just going to regenerate the base elements here, and then I'm going to go and customize it. We're going to see how this particular, how we can use the forms experience, our Smart Forms designer, to go and customize this form. All right, so now let's go and change that form. This is where it gets fun and exciting. Let's go and edit. So before we edit this document, a couple of things. I don't want to be changing this in a live environment. I want to make the changes. I want to do it in isolation. I don't want my end users to be seeing what I'm doing, what I'm tinkering with as I go through this. So I'm going to check it out, much like checking documents in and out of SharePoint, if you're familiar with that. I'm just going to make it so I'm editing it. I've got ownership of that. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to edit that form. And the first time here, we'll see some of the tooling we use to build these applications. So everything in K2 is about visual design, visual composition of applications. Whether it's building forms or whether it's building workflows, it should be a drag and drop experience. I should be guided through that experience. I'm not going to jump into some cryptic scripting language at any point to sort of produce functions to do certain things. Drag, drop, configure what I need to achieve, whether I'm building the forms here or whether I'm building the workflow in just a moment too. So first thing here is this is that form I showed you earlier, that form we opened, and here we have it. Pretty simple. It's just got my name, my title. These are the elements we had from our document library. The nice thing you'll see is that everything is in context because our forms know that, hey, I'm building a form against that contracts library that I created. So I have all of that context available to me here in the fields. Now, why this is important, it means that I can just drag and drop some of these elements directly onto my canvas. I don't have to go through, again, some elaborate process to call services or anything like that. I've just got it here for me. I can start adding that to my form. So let's do some really simple form customization. Let's drag on contract amount. Let's drag on products. And let's drag on regions. And as you see, it's fairly simple drag and drop design. Makes it nice and easy. Now, this is going to be a pretty bland form if I leave it just like this. Text boxes, yes, I can fill it in. Not really what I'm wanting to achieve as part of this really compelling form. There's one thing I've learned over the years is that salespeople are pretty lazy. They don't like typing in information, so let's make it easy for them. Let's make this form a little bit more interactive. So first thing we were going to do is we're going to change some of the controls on this form. So we've got contract amount, so why not have that as a currency? And so I mentioned controls there. So when you're building your K2 Smart Forms, we have a range of different controls, different user experience elements that you can use as part of your forms. Now, these controls range from just standard input elements. They range from things like converting a form to a PDF, perhaps for archiving purposes. They also include reporting controls. So you can build not only just simple data capture forms, but true decision-making experiences. I'll come back to that a little bit later on as well. And so one of the things we're going to do here is I'm going to change this control because we have this really fancy currency control, and I want to use that because it makes sense. Also helps if our salespeople can see the dollar signals. It gives them nice positive reinforcement there as well. The other products and regions, well, I actually want to bind this to existing information. My forms need to be dynamic. They need to draw information from different sources. It doesn't make sense if I just hard code these values. I want to make sure these are dynamic and I can manage those lists, things like the products we sell, the regions we support outside of the actual form itself. So first of all, I'm going to change this particular asset, my products. I want a nice autocomplete. We've got lots of products. Having a drop-down list is a bit cumbersome. Let's just type in the first few letters and it'll autocomplete for me, and I'll draw that information from somewhere. Perfect. Let's turn that to an autocomplete control. And then for region, well, we've only got a few regions. Let's just have a drop-down list there as well. So we can come in and I can select these values. So you can see how easy it is just to start configuring, building these compelling forms. It's all bound to the information that I'm working with, in this case, that library. So the last thing I'm going to need to do is I need to just tell these particular controls where this information comes from. And so that's very simple. There's no coding involved. There's no having to call services. It's all nice and drag and drop for you. So I'm just going to come and say, hey, actually, for all of my product information here, I'm going to come to a bunch of different assets I have, they're pre-configured, and this particular information is just coming from a SharePoint list. So I'm going to take it from my products list. Now, when I talk about SharePoint, if I had a hybrid environment, I could be building a form here in an on-premises environment and actually pulling this list information from perhaps my SharePoint Online environment. So you can actually build forms and you can build workflows that actually span different SharePoint environments in one experience. We don't actually differentiate. You're not sort of stuck in this mini silo of, hey, I can only build apps in Office 365 and use that information, or I can only do it on premises. We're quite happy to talk to each of those environments as you need, when you need, even in the same experience.
And it's important to point out when we do that, it's through or maintaining the security context as well. So the configuration between those environments has already been done. The security of who you are and how you talk to those systems in the context of you is maintained throughout the system without storing username and passwords at this point in the process. So it's a very, very key point of how we integrate with those things.
Perfect. All right, so I've done some simple customization there. Looking at a design canvas like this, it's a bit bland. Let's push on. So I'm going to save that. So I've saved my form. Now remember, I had my form open before. I showed you the first version of it. So let's go back there. Let's give that a test. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to refresh my form. And so the first thing you'll notice here is that my form's now changed because I've been editing my form. I've got some nice, the first thing is we've got more controls. We've actually got some nice controls we'll start working with. So first of all, I mentioned it's all about the dollars here for our salespeople. We've got this great little currency. If we're selling globally, we can pick different things. So perhaps if I'm in Singapore, I can come and sell, set this out to be Sing dollars. But for today, as the example, we're obviously sitting in the US and we can add some value. Perfect. Now, the other thing I mentioned was about our autocomplete control. We wanted to make sure it was easy. We just wanted our customers, or most probably our salespeople here, to just start typing and get this information back. Now, remember, I didn't configure these values anywhere. These are actually stored in a SharePoint list. I can manage these values all by myself in my SharePoint list, and they'll be immediately reflected in my form. Simple, easy, get started really quickly. No code required for that. No messing around with services. Finally, my regions. I've got a whole bunch of regions equally. These come from a SharePoint list. I'll just select one of them. If I wanted to, I can come and save this. I can go back to my list. It's all saved for me. And that's how easy it is to start deploying an application, getting started, customizing the forms experience, adding some really cool controls to make it easy for you, easy for your end users, and help them actually fill in these forms. Okay, so I think we're done with that workflow. We've still got our view flow open. I tell you what, let's finish this task and see what happens. We're going to approve it. We're pretty happy with that document. We've gone and looked at it. It's all great. Perfect. Thank you. If we jump back here quick enough, well, there you go. We've actually seen our view flow, our visual representation of that workflow change in real time. It's gone up to the approved line at the top there. It's currently finishing off setting the status. It'll send us a nice email. That'll be our job done. There you go. All finished. And that's our workflow. So really simple scenario there, building and customizing the forms. But let's be honest, our workflow is a little bit light. We want to add a little bit more integration here, a few more steps. So now let's come in and actually start customizing this workflow as well. So I'm done with my form. Fantastic. That's working a treat. We can even now, we're happy with that. We're going to check it in so all of our end users can start using that. So now I said my workflow was a bit light. I wanted to add some value, add some additional functionality in that. What we'll see is it's the exact same approach in terms of designing a workflow and combining it with my forms here. It's all about a visual drag and drop experience. From a workflow perspective, I just talk about it's boxes and arrows. It's like a flow chart, but this thing actually executes and does a whole bunch of stuff for me. Actually, Visio's great for drawing pretty pictures. But what we actually want to do is we want to have a functioning workflow that drives my business. Sorry if you guys work in Visio, I apologize. So, first thing with my workflow design canvas. I have this lovely experience here, all drag and drop. I mentioned about the human element of these workflows. If you're a developer and you've perhaps come from Build last week and you've heard things like Logic apps and all of these cool things they're introducing to Azure, they're fantastic and Microsoft use the word workflow there, but they're very system workflow. Do this, all very system-centric. There's no concept of users in there whatsoever. K2 and our Applet platform, very much about users, getting them to make decisions as we saw before. Also, automating interactions with systems. So let's have a quick tour of the design canvas for those of you who are brand new to K2 and the Applet platform. Very simple. We have a whole set of wizards that I'm going to design and drag onto my canvas. These wizards give me the capability to automate various interaction with people, various interactions with different systems. So I can come in here and I can build, hey, if I want to change the status of or the property of one of my metadata columns on this library, that's okay. I can use my documents wizard here and use the update properties wizard to do that, and that's what I've done here as well. If I want to go and create things like SharePoint provisioning scenarios, so perhaps we want to put some controls around people requesting new sites within SharePoint, put some controls and put a request form in there, automate a workflow as part of that, send it to IT to approve, and then have a workflow provision that. Fantastic, I can do that through my sites wizards here as well. And as you can see, we have a whole bunch of wizards, including things like those DocuSign wizards as I mentioned as well. Hey, let's go and send this document as I finish it, send it off to our customer, get them to sign it. Actually, we've got this signed contract. We can start booking that money. Fantastic. So let's have a look at that experience I mentioned. Let's talk about the human element. Let's come back to my review piece here. And as part of that, we can define what we call participants. Because this was a template, it's really, really simple. I've just got one user, the person who submitted this. In reality, we're not going to use that. We're going to have more complex rules to actually assign it to people. So I can come and look for myself and drag in myself there if I wanted to. I can maybe change it to different SharePoint groups and roles and assign it to a team of people. And if I assign it to multiple people, I can even define things like, hey, I need 3 of you to approve it before moving on down this step. So there's complex business rules you can design into that. I can even go and look up these people from a different system. So perhaps I want to go and find the appropriate sales manager for the region I selected. And that information lives in Dynamics CRM. Perfect. I can go and look that information up through my workflow because K2 and Appit for SharePoint can reach beyond the boundaries of SharePoint. We can talk to all of these other systems as well. We'll have a look at that in just a minute too. So this is all the human element of assigning the task to the right people at the right time. These are runtime. We can obviously go do this dynamically and change these conditions based upon perhaps the regions as we discussed. The other piece we wanted to do is we wanted to extend this platform as well. We're going to come and say next. And what you'll see is we're now designing and extending our workflow experience. We've got this lovely drop zone here. Now, I want to send this document off to DocuSign for approval. I need a signature. That's the easiest way to do it in my world. I could go about using these particular wizards to go and construct a DocuSign envelope and assign the right participant and do everything required as part of DocuSign. But in fairness, that's a bit tedious. It can take a few steps. Why don't we just automate that? So Anthony mentioned earlier about creating reusable workflows. Every workflow you create with K2 is reusable. So I've already created a workflow that sends it off to DocuSign. In fact, it came from our template I mentioned before. So all I need to do is come back up to my wizards here. I've got a lovely wizard that says call a sub workflow. And so I can actually start chaining workflows together to say, hey, when this workflow reaches this point, go and start a sub workflow. Maybe I want to wait for that workflow to finish, maybe I don't, and I can start chaining these workflows together, and it's a great way of developing reuse across the organization. The other thing is here, talking about different users creating these applications, is that if this is a relatively technical workflow, then in fairness, why don't we just have perhaps IT build this workflow for us, and then have that light up for our business users, our visual developers, to take advantage of as well. That's one of the key elements of the K2 platform and Appit for SharePoint platform, is to make sure that you can have those two groups of people interact. I can have IT create technical assets and they appear across the platform. It enables my business users, my visual developers to take advantage of that without having to worry about the intricacies of what that may involve. And equally, IT can put governance around that. They can control how people interact and how they call those services, which is equally important when we look at these platforms. So I've got my send sales contract to DocuSign workflow here, which is great. It's going to say, hey, I need some sort of signatory. I need an email and a name for that person. This is required by DocuSign. What I'll also notice here is that I showed you that context information when I was building my form. I showed you how I just had my form. I could drag in my product information, my contract amount, as well as my region. Well, my workflow has the same experience. I have the context of the assets that I'm working with. I'm not duplicating this information. None of this is being duplicated by K2 or the workflow. It's just talking to that list or library or that record in CRM, whatever system you're talking to in real time, which is very important as well. You don't want to be duplicating this information in different systems. Just talk to that system as and when you need it. So I've got that same context available to me here. I'm just going to come in and grab perhaps the name of the person who created it, also send the email. Fantastic. And then we can finish that off as well. Let's give that a nice label and say something like send to DocuSign, and we're good. Now, we can also do that here as well. We can carry on extending my workflow, and we can come and do other things. We can send nice emails. We can perhaps even start sending this off and go and create an announcement in our SharePoint list to say, hey, we've closed another deal. We're happy about that. So we can extend these workflows, we deploy it, and then we get that same experience I spoke about earlier. You'll also notice I spoke a few times about things like integrating with different systems. Whenever you build these assets and whenever you build forms, whenever you build workflows, it's not just about the context of SharePoint. Yes, I may want a SharePoint experience. Yes, I may want it to be seamless for my end users. I'm even in SharePoint building these apps. But in reality, there's the technical reality that most organizations have, let's call it a hybrid infrastructure. They have Microsoft investments. They have investments maybe in SAP. They have investments in perhaps other products like Salesforce for CRM environments. And Anthony mentioned earlier things like this content fragmentation element. A lot of organizations now perhaps started with SharePoint and just some almost viral element within the business has started introducing other content repositories, things like Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, and others. Now, IT may have intentionally taken that route. More often than not, it was a user-driven, business user-driven experience just because perhaps Jack in marketing decided Dropbox was easier, I'm going to ignore the corporate standard, I'm going to start using that, and then all of a sudden his team's using it to supply marketing material around to different people, which means the salespeople have adopted it, and now our governance strategy around collaboration and storage and knowledge management has started to fragment. So this question of, well, how do we start drawing that back together is an interesting one. So let's have a look at how we can do that using these same style of apps. Because you can see here, not only do we provide integration with the likes of SharePoint, and we've done that for over 15 years now, we also provide integration with these other cloud services, in our case, Box. So I'm going to move away from SharePoint. I promise I'll be back to it in about 10 or 15 minutes, don't you worry. So I'm going to move away from my design canvas here and have a talk about that content fragmentation piece we spoke about. Let's cruise up here. So a lot of our customers have had this experience, and we've spoken to a few, where they actually have scenarios, they have content, whether they designed it or not, that is now starting to fragment across these different collaboration platforms. And it's just a fact of life. For us, it's a question of, well, people want to draw in, they want to be able to build the same compelling apps around that, but particularly from a knowledge management and a government perspective, we actually want to create apps that perhaps start moving some of this content from these platforms through a structured process back into the likes of SharePoint. And that becomes very easy with the K2 platform and the Applet platform for SharePoint as well. And I just want to show you a simple example of this because it also speaks to the power of the platform, is that from a K2 perspective, we can build the same compelling workflows, the same compelling forms on business information, whether it's unstructured, content-based information inside of a product like Box, or on other cloud-based services or on-premise services as well. And we'll have a look at some of that for the next couple of minutes. So I spoke about, well, how do we put structure around assigning, getting this content out of Box and perhaps putting it back into SharePoint, back into Office 365. So what I built using the exact same tooling I showed you before was just a really simple example of what you can do with Applet for SharePoint in building these apps. So I have a Box environment here. It's spun up by one of our salespeople. It's now become this sort of critical mass and people are starting to collaborate around it. I need to put some controls around that. So what I did was I created a brand new workflow and forms that I showed you earlier. Let me find a nice document. Let's go back here. We'll use this guy. So what I've done was, even in this experience, I've come to my Box environment, and I'm actually going to come here, and you can see I've got a set of K2 actions. And I've got this send to, and I've got this nicely configured as part of this experience to say, hey, I need to send this to governance review. I've actually created some workflows, some K2 workflows, exactly the same ones you saw before, that actually manage how we're going to go through a review cycle to say, hey, we need to store this document. It shouldn't be where it is. We want to go through a review cycle, send it to our knowledge management team. They should determine where it should be stored appropriately and then assign the right metadata and go through that process. So you want a structured approach to how we manage this content, which is great. So I can send it straight to Office 365, a governance review. I may even send it to legal review if I need to as well. But let's take governance review for today. That's fantastic. Now what's going to appear here is a form that you may not recognize. It's just a simple form. It's got some great logos on it. This is a smart form. It's the same form, same forms experience I showed you in SharePoint. It's just got a different theme. I built it the exact same way. just drag and drop, configured my form. It just happens to be talking to a different set of data. In this case, it's pulling my information from Box around that environment. Equally, I can drill into things like I can see the comments associated with that. I can see the versions associated with that document. There aren't any at the moment. I can even add a comment, say, perfect. We can add that comment. And there you go. You can actually start seeing some of the very cool features of the SmartForms platform as well. Is that I add a comment in one part of the form, it dynamically updates the second. Built that the exact same way I built my form earlier. Simple drag and drop. Didn't have to write any cryptic scripting language in the browser to make that happen. Didn't have to write any JavaScript. The same platform for building SmartForms in SharePoint built this form too. Gives me some nice context. And if you don't believe me, we can come in here. We can come and see the different comments associated with that as well. So let's move back to my environment. Come in here. Let's get rid of that for the time being. Excellent. And we're going to submit this for review. Now that submit for review kicked off a K2 workflow. The app for SharePoint workflow I've been talking about that we built for review purposes has started that. Very similar to the one before, drag and drop designer. Let's have a look at how that works. Now, not everyone works in SharePoint. Not everyone works on a laptop. Obviously, mobile is a big deal. So let's take a little bit of a tangent now and talk about how we can experience these applications outside of the desktop, outside of our browser even as well. So let's hope the technology gods are smiling and move to a mobile device. All right. Okay. Excellent. There's a nice bug. So what I've done here is I've actually moved to the K2 app on an iPad. Now, as you'd expect, you want to be able to take these exact same experience, these forms, these workflows, that task list I mentioned before, that task list I experienced in SharePoint, I want to be able to access that on my phone, on my tablet, wherever the case may be. So this is the K2 app that I've got here. Now, if I come and refresh this, we've already got the task, in fact. It's at the top of my list there. So here's my task. It's going to show me all of the details. It gives me some nice instructions around what I'm meant to be doing. Hey, please review the document, take the appropriate action. I've even got things like how long it's been running, which is a great element. If I want to put things like escalations around this, great concept to say, hey, you've got 4 hours to go and review this document. If you exceed that SLA, we want to take some proactive steps there as well. All of that's factored in to the actual workflow as well. I can even see who it's assigned to. In this case, it's just assigned to me, which is fine. I've got other tasks here. They have the same element. So let's go and action this task. Now, the key part here is that I need more than just the task. The task is great to see, but I need the context in which I'm working with. I need that form that I just saw a second ago. Perfect. So I'm going to click on my form, and this is going to load that same form that I showed you just a moment ago. It's going to give me all of my details around my document that currently is sitting in Box, but should be in Office 365. It's going to give me the same context that I saw before. It's going to give me the document itself, and it even gives me those decisions that we saw, the actual decisions that I can make as part of this particular process. So I'm going to be able to action this directly from here. So I've got the same context. I can drill into the comments. What you'll also notice, if we drop that keyboard, is that our actual workflow has gone and added some comments to this as well. So as part of that automation process, we've got this file submitted for review by the administrator. We can actually see that this comment was created by Bob Smith. So this is another example of what Anthony spoke of earlier. It's about that security context. We don't store any passwords. We make sure we just use industry standards to actually make sure that all of your authentication, all of your credentials flow through into the right space. That means everything you see is already security trimmed. Whether it's in SharePoint, whether it's in other line of business systems, you just see what you get to see, which is as it should be. So I'm going to add a comment. So something like, you're right. I'll even try and spell that correctly. Excellent. Add that comment. Same experience there for me. I'm now working on a forms platform that gives me real-time information, interactivity, mobile device, build it once, experience it everywhere. So let's come back to my file details, which is great. I can even jump into the file. I'm going to read this contract. Hey, it's a test deck, which is great. That's really engaging. Should have picked a better document there, surely. Now I can make a decision. I've got the same decisions there, or I've reviewed my document. I've got the decisions to drive this workflow forward. I can approve that, and away it goes, and I've synced with all of that. Now, the next question comes is, that's fantastic, but But at times, mobile devices, I'm on the bus on the way here, we're in the tunnels, the connection's a bit intermittent. I'm on the plane, I'm trying to get through some work. What about things like offline? So a big part of what we offer now as part of our mobile apps is the capability to take these forms offline. I can take my task list offline. I can take the associated forms offline. So even though I'm not working, I may not be connected to a device, I can still see that form, I can still see the information, and I can make the decision. It puts that decision into my outbox, and when I come back online next time, sync straight away, actions the work list, and away we go. As it should be as to how we experience these. So the work list, the app isn't just about actually starting and working with these or actioning tasks and getting my work list. Remember, same work list here as I saw in SharePoint. I could even have this outside of SharePoint too. Same concept, same information. But I can also use this and I can also access specific forms on this environment directly from my device. These forms can be built using the exact same Smart Forms designer. I'm going to show you that in just a second too. But I have a customer account work desk here. And this just gives me some insight into the different elements of my business. It's going to show me all of my accounts. It's going to show me all of my opportunities. Because I'm a salesperson, I want to see all of this while I'm on the go. But I want a customized experience for this. This is why we've built this app. All of this is available to me directly from my tablet. I can navigate through this information and see how we built this. Now, remember, we were talking about forms earlier. And hands up if you've used InfoPath or you've still got InfoPath in your organization. Wow. That's impressive. I think between us, Anthony and I must probably have 2 decades worth of InfoPath experience, so we understand your pain. So InfoPath and the replacement of InfoPath has been a big talking point over the last couple of years, since the announcement 18 months or so ago. And a lot of people talk about forms just in terms of, hey, I need to capture some information. But really, that's only just a small part of what forms should be. So forms should be about building business applications. Forms should be about building a variety of different assets and not having screensavers pop up. So when I use a forms platform, I want to make sure that I can do far more than just, hey, I need to capture some information. Yes, you need to be able to do that. But when I build forms, I want to make sure that I can actually build forms on information. I can build business apps. I want to build apps around information in my CRM systems, in SAP, on top of SharePoint. That's what a forms platform should do. It should give me the ability to create far more than just a simple capture form. And that's really what we set out to do with Smart Forms, because this experience here is built using the same form platform that I built my nice SharePoint app earlier in the piece. So let's have a look at some of that now. If we jump back to my desktop here, Anthony, that'd be great. Thank you, sir. So let's have a look at some of the apps. So I spoke about this need to be able to have a forms platform that can do far more than just capture, build real business apps. We don't use the term apps because it's a bit generic. Business apps is about what we're trying to do. We're trying to drive business outcomes. We're trying to get business information to make decisions, on top of the different platforms we use. We're not trying to build Candy Crush or things like that with this platform. That's a different type of app. But let's have a look at the apps I want to build here. So let's go and look at my customer Workdesk app. That same app that I used and you saw me a second ago experiencing through my iPad, here it is on my desktop. And as you most probably guessed, based upon the really big logo in the top-hand corner, this is actually, all of this information is coming straight from Salesforce. So I'm just showing you that context of when I build business applications for my organization, they may start in SharePoint and I may have a very specific SharePoint need, which is obviously very important. We saw how we can solve that. But I need the same platform, that same investment to be able to deliver business apps across my organization. And that means also across my different systems. So let's have a look at my little work desk here. I built this using Smart Forms. I'm going to jump in and edit this form in just a second. I'll show you exactly how. But I've got this fantastic account information. All of this is coming from Salesforce. Same concept we spoke of earlier. All of it's immediately security trimmed. I only see what I have permission for as I log in here. I can see my different pieces of information. I can even drill into an opportunity here and see that information. Now, a couple of fundamental things, if you're familiar with InfoPath, a couple of things you'd be also familiar with is things like calculations, different rules triggering different actions. You would have seen me already create some pretty cool forms where I update one field, automatically refreshes a list below. All of that's nice and possible here using the Smart Forms platform. So while this may look different, trust me, it's the exact same forms experience. I'm going to make some changes for it in just a second. So here we are. You may notice the currency control from earlier. So one of the things we want to see here is we've got a nice calculation. So what you'll notice is the expected revenue on the right-hand side there is going to change based upon a calculation. So this probability, how comfortable are we that we're going to close this deal, is going to change as I select different values. So it's going to move from 50 to 60, and that's then creating a calculation on what our expected revenue is. So as we make these changes, we've got effectively 4 different controls interacting with one another to do this calculation. Didn't have to write any code for that, didn't have to write any JavaScript. I'll show you how I did that in just a second. All visual, all nice and simple. And if you're familiar with creating rules in InfoPath, by the sounds of it, a lot of you are, it's actually easier than doing it in InfoPath as well. And then you can do things like this. So I'm really happy I've progressed this deal. I'm going to update. Now remember, what I'm updating here and what I'm interacting with through this form is actually Salesforce. It's talking directly to Salesforce. We're not caching any of that information. We're not duplicating it. We're just making sure we can work with that really easily and give you the ability to create really compelling forms. What you also notice is I've got my opportunity history here. This is all coming straight from Salesforce. As I said, salespeople, they don't like doing a lot of things. I know a lot of my Salesforce don't even like going into the Salesforce platform. It's cluttered. There's too much information. To be fair, I don't like going into it. Why don't we reshape that application to suit their needs, to give them just the information they need so they can be a little bit more effective? The other point is that it's not just about combining one data source here. Our system of record in this case is Salesforce. It could just as easily be Dynamic CRM, build the same scenario. But it's not just about one source. I want to combine multiple sources of information here. So what we've also got here is we've got our opportunity documents. So the documents associated with all these opportunities, I want to be able to see those assigned here. I have a whole bunch of documents assigned here, and this is coming from, in my particular case, it's coming from Box. So I'm now combining multiple cloud repositories into one application. Could I also combine information and files from OneDrive or Office 365? You bet I can. We showed that last week at Build as well. Could I combine information perhaps from SAP into this form and combine Salesforce SAP on premises with my cloud-based storage from OneDrive and build an app? Of course I can do that as well. So now, rather than having these micro silos, and a lot of cloud platforms are sort of, the more you use, the more micro silos you end up establishing. If I've got Salesforce and I've got SharePoint and I've got Rike for project management, I've got all of these systems, they're great, but they do one thing and one thing well. A lot of the time you need to draw these into a business application, and this is a great way of doing that. So now we have this great application to actually experience different environment, recast the way we actually work, which is perfect. So that's my environment there. One of the other things we can do, I mentioned that work list earlier. So here's just a simple example, nice interactive form. I can get my work list even outside of that environment. So now we've seen that universal work list in 3 different environments. We've seen it in SharePoint, we've seen it on my mobile device, and we've seen it in a brand new business app we've constructed here to make sure that our salespeople are going to be a lot more effective and efficient. That's great, but I haven't shown any design tooling for a while, so let's go and edit this form and see what we can do. So I'm going to come into my designer. You'd be familiar with this design experience I showed you before. So let's come in and have a look at building my forms information and go and customizing my forms. So I'm going to customize a view. Now you'd notice that in my form here, I'm just going to take a little step back, is that in my form here that I've actually got a number of different sections. I've got some account summary information. I've got opportunity details. I've got my opportunity history information. Now I might use this same context in different applications, so I don't have to duplicate that. So one of the key concepts in Smart Forms is about creating what we call a view, and then I can reuse those views to create my forms. If you're familiar with the web part, it's the exact same sort of concept. Here's a web part. I go into SharePoint. I go and create a brand new page in SharePoint with different web parts, and some web parts I can even say, hey, when I do something here, make this web part change. It's the exact same concept when I'm building my Smart Forms inside of K2. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to come into my opportunity details, and let's have a quick edit of that. Now, even though I'm working and building a form, on this case, around Salesforce information, it's the exact same experience we saw earlier. Let's pump that up a little bit. Yep, let's check that out. So remember, I built that form on Smart Forms, and I had all of the context about in SharePoint on my document library. I had things like the title, the name, my product, who created it. Now that I'm creating this form on Salesforce, I have the exact same context around, in this case, the opportunity. Now, this is really important. I don't have to go and make calls as part of my form and write JavaScript, or go and make, if you're familiar with REST calls and things like that, or make OAuth calls and all of that sort of stuff. All of that's hidden away from me. I just want to focus on building forms in the context of the information I'm working with. In this case, it's an opportunity in Salesforce. So I have all of my opportunity information here, close date, type, etc. I can come and do the exact same thing we saw earlier. Let's do some customization. I'm going to come and grab close dates. If I've already missed it, there we go. Yep. Thank you for pointing that out. Drag that on. It obviously knows that close date is a date, so it automatically gives me a calendar control, which is fantastic. So I can customize that calendar control through my properties here. So let's select that. Now, I can come and set the style of the date that I want. Pretty easy. If you're familiar with, if you've ever changed the font in Word, this experience should be very familiar to you. But I'm going to change the actual date time. Rather than just being short date, I want the full date time. I want to see, obviously, the date that it closed. I want to see when exactly. Was it 4:59 on the last day of the month when we closed this opportunity, or was it actually a bit earlier than that? So let's have a look at that. So we can very easily customize that experience, and I can even go and customize the UI and various elements quite simply through that experience. Obviously, not every date format in the world is the same. Coming from Australia, I find American dates a little hard to deal with even now. So perhaps we want customization. We want to make sure the right date format is applied. So we can use the user's language settings, and if you're using day, month, month, year, you'll get that. If you're using the crazy American format, you'll get that too. Sorry. Honest last dig at that. So we can do that. Now, I mentioned that calculation earlier as well. We did that calculation where we had the probability or the stage of the opportunity working at driving our probability, which then was doing a calculation on how much our expected revenue value was. Let's have a look at how easy it was to configure that. I'm going to select my expected revenue control here. We have this concept called expressions. And if you've ever written a function in Excel, which I can almost guarantee all of you have, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on that, but it's the same sort of concept. I don't have to write any sort of scripting language to do that. It's just a nice drag and drop experience where I can get the context of what I'm working with, whether it's the controls, whether it's other elements about that the Salesforce record I'm working with in this particular example, and I can drag those elements and create this nice function here to determine how I should do that calculation. So again, it's all about drag and drop composition, building these forms, building these workflows. The workflow that sits behind this, exact same tooling. That web-based tooling I showed you before, nice drag and drop experience there. Okay, so that's customizing my form. We can finish that. You're going to have to trust me the form changes. Now, we started in SharePoint, and I think it's really important we finish in SharePoint because these are great. These business applications are great. And as I wrap up here, it's fantastic to have these business applications. It's fantastic to be able to tap into different sources of information and build really compelling business applications. But in order to drive adoption of SharePoint, in order to turn SharePoint into that platform, we want to make sure it's the singular place to go. So a lot of what everyone's been talking about this week in the keynotes and the different product sessions is Yammer coming into SharePoint, BI coming into SharePoint. You've got the new Office Graph experience coming into SharePoint. And so rather than having disparate business applications or disparate products, SharePoint is that platform I go to do work. It's my productivity platform. And as Satya said on Monday, you combine that with business process management and business process apps like we've been building here, that's going to drive business efficiency. So why don't we take all of these apps back into SharePoint and have a singular experience for my SharePoint-based apps, my Salesforce apps, as part of one scenario. So I've showed you this portal a couple of times already. It's a pretty standard-looking SharePoint experience, nice sales portal. What I've actually done here, and I'm not going to go and edit all of this, but all of these assets that you see on screen are different smart forms I created with the K2 Applet for SharePoint platform. So each one of these, I've got my SharePoint list. That's a smart form. I've got my different templates here. I've customized that experience. I've taken, rather than just use the standard document library, I wanted a slightly customized experience as to how do we launch those. So I've got that there as well. That's a smart form. I've got my opportunities. This is just a summary of information of my most recent opportunities. That's coming directly from Salesforce. So now in my sales dashboard inside of SharePoint, I've got all of my contextual information that I need. Regardless of where it may live, I'm keeping that in the system of record where it should live, but I'm drawing this into a lovely dashboard inside of SharePoint. SharePoint becomes my destination. It becomes my apps platform. The reporting controls. I mentioned earlier about all the fantastic controls you get inside of our SmartForms product and our, being able to combine that with our workflow product. Fantastic. Exactly the same control there. It's just still a SmartForm drawing upon all of my sales information as well. I can see all of my dashboarding as well and look forward to seeing some great content around our reporting controls in a couple of months there as well. But the last thing I want to show was, well, actually, we want our salespeople not only to go to the sales portal to consume information, which is great. SharePoint's a great platform to go and consume information, but we want it also to be a place where I go and do my work. I want my forms in there, regardless of the types of business apps I'm using, regardless of where the information's coming from. I want my experience in there as well. I want that unified business apps experience. So here's that same Salesforce-driven customer dashboard embedded directly into SharePoint. As I said, could be SharePoint on premises, could be Office 365. It's entirely up to you and your organization. What makes sense to you, we'll support you in that. And as you move forward, perhaps from on-prem to hybrid to cloud, one platform can support you through that entire scenario as well. So here's my app. Here it is inside of SharePoint. And now I can do that same experience. I can come into my opportunities. I can find that op I showed you before. I can see all of my information. And now SharePoint becomes a true business platform, not only for the consumption of any type of business information. Let's drop that out a little bit. Not for any type of information, whether that's search-driven, whether that's through BI, but also that platform to actually interact and start executing on my business applications as well. And there's my close date. I don't have a close date yet because we haven't actually closed our opportunity, and we'll perhaps do that in another session. All right, that is a hell of a lot of information. Wow, I didn't expect you to agree. But the thing I want you to take away from this is a couple of things. First of all, it's easy to build apps in SharePoint. It shouldn't be about starting with a blank canvas. I want an app, I want to click, I want to deploy a template. If I want to customize it, fantastic, I can do that. Then if I want to experience how I customize that app, should be all visual. Drag and drop, configure both my forms, my workflow. You saw how I did that a couple of times. Let's configure that integration. Let's not have to worry about abstracting just a little bit of that away, but at some point I have to jump into writing JavaScript. At that point, it just defeats the purpose. My whole experience should be a drag and drop experience. It should be about composing both the forms and the workflow, combining those into business apps. At the same time, I want to make sure I've got the capability to deliver SharePoint-based apps, as we started with, as well as apps on all of my information in my business. Because that's when you get growth. That's the types of apps that Satya was talking about. How do I combine all of my enterprise into these business apps and make my organization more productive? And then finally, you want to experience them everywhere. Whether it's outside of SharePoint, but better yet, if we want to experience them inside of SharePoint like this, easy. If I want to experience it on my mobile app, easy. And if I happen to be offline, let's do that too. All right, thank you. Anthony.
Thanks, Jana. All right, so with that, we're just going to kind of wrap up. I'll leave a little slide of where are we today, a little bit more K2 information for the folks who don't know us. We're at over 1,500 customers in more than 84 countries and 30% of the Fortune 100. We continue to see this year over year, 30% growth. And we've had this recent investment that you may have read about of over $100 million from Francisco Partners. So K2 is strong. You've seen what we're doing with our platform. You see how we continue to grow and innovate. And we certainly want you to come and find out more. So come over to our booth at 519. We're having daily customer presentations. So customers are excited about what they're able to build with our product. They're coming to the booth and talking about it. I believe Cliff is talking right now.
Yeah, we've got so today's is maybe a great one because Cliff Bar is coming to talk about what they're doing with K2 at 519, and they're giving away free Cliff Bars. So if you're a little bit hungover and you need a little bit of a kick, come and see a great presentation and get a free bar as well.
We'll also have a strong partner community who's sharing their successes as well. So you'll see some partner presentations. We've got the K2 staff doing daily presentations. We've got hands-on labs available. We've got our TSs there to do one-on-one presentations. If you want to drill into anything that you saw today, we can drill into that, show you exactly how we built it, and show you how we can integrate with all the other things that were on that big, crazy slide of logos. And then we've got a lot of giveaways and raffles as well. And again, if anything else that wasn't covered here, you have any other questions, you can visit us at k2.com or appit.com.
And as you can see, I love talking about this, so you can corral me in a corner outside and we can talk about it all afternoon.
So thank you very much, and we'll stick around for questions and answers.
So we're actually giving away a prize. Wow.
All right.
So hang on, no,
376.
376. 376. You got to be here to win it.
No.
Let's do again. What are we going? 639. Oh, jeez, I might win it at this time. 724.
All right, my turn.
Yeah, I'm useless.
No.
350.
Woohoo!
All right. See? Lucky guy.
Thanks, everyone.